Good to go.
It says on there, so we should be good.
You're not seeing the live stream.
It's not there.
Okay, we're good to go. Okay. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, September 28th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. We are in the Brecksville-Broadview Heights Education Center, 6638 Mill Road, Brecksville. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as an indicated agenda item. Prior to the regular meeting, the board will meet in executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. Item A per board policy 0166. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Item B. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes, Kathleen will be joining us later this evening. Moving on to item 2, executive session. Resolve to enter into executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per Ohio Revised Code 121.22, item A. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. We will be in executive session until 7 p.m. where we will reconvene with the rest of the agenda.
Just your microphone.
Thank you. Okay, we are on item 2C, exit executive session. Resolve to exit executive session. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. We are now out of executive session and we are going to welcome people into our meeting room. Right, if anyone wants to speak, yeah, you fill out a little sheet and we'll get you in the queue. All right, while they're filling that out, we're going to move on to item 4, President's announcements. I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank our staff and all of our families for a successful start to the school year. I know there were some challenges out there, and we made a lot of changes this year with the high school and middle school aligning with the start time, which put a lot more traffic on Mill Road. And of course, the opening of our new elementary, which had a bit of a plumbing issue to start, but we got to the other side of that. So just appreciate all of our staff and all of our families and the community at large for helping us work through those challenges and getting to the other side. Also, just want to call out again, the middle school PSO continues to help push forward with renovations to our auditorium. And so that is continuing to move forward. So more to come on that later as we evaluate our PI needs, our permanent improvement needs in our district. We're going to move on to item 5, district committee reports. The first is financial liaison audit committee, Kathleen and myself. There's nothing new to report on that. Permanent improvement committee, Ellen and myself, and I think we're looking at teeing up a meeting shortly.
October or November.
October or November, so stay tuned. Board policy committee, Kathleen and Tish.
We have our upcoming policy meeting on November 7th. 4:15, and then obviously we have a policy item on the agenda this evening.
Right, we have our weapons policy. I think it's our second read for that.
Yes.
Transportation Appeals Committee, myself, have been no appeals to date, which is good. Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, we have Mr. Gilbride here with us. So Jim, I'm sure that light is on. So got a green light if it is.
There we go. Is that better? Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. Sure, it's been an interesting and exciting start to the school year. Several things going on at CVCC. First, like to invite all of the board members, the superintendent and treasurer to the all boards dinner in October on the 27th. Hopefully you've seen that invite and encourage you to participate if at all possible. Earlier today, I sent out some enrollment information, and if you have questions about it, please let me know. But some highlights for everyone. 117 students, 80% retention this year from last year. First year students this year again came in at 20% of that class. That's the highest we've had since 2014. So our attendance is trending up. Our retention for keeping our kids there at the second year is also above average over there. So all in all, a positive sign from the enrollment side. And also, I was just noticing we have the third highest total number of kids over there this year. So that's different for us.
That's great.
That's amazing, isn't it? So I was very surprised to see that, but pleasantly so. Construction over the summer has been completed. The new drive is completed. The entryway has been cleaned up, new landscaping. So please take a look if you have a chance. Just want to mention also the summer camps will be returning next year. I know that was a concern. Most of the heavy construction's out of the way. There still will be some more improvements going on over there. Continue to be impressed with the administration, sticking to the strategic plan. We consistently have updates on a 5-year building maintenance program and a 5-year technology plan. So very good use of the resources, good planning, and now engaged in trying to make sure we have the right class structure, the right offerings for our kids, and also beginning to build in on the adult education side. With all of the funds that have come from the pandemic, we've invested in new machinery to add a second of what we hope will be 4 pillar programs. This will be around manufacturing, and that is due to start next year. And then we're looking at the 3rd and 4th program there. So all good stuff. Any questions or concerns from the board?
Those 4 pillars, and in particular the manufacturing, have you had any success in outreach to companies in the area that are looking for help in the manufacturing area, and are they influencing the curriculum at all?
Well, Dave and his group are definitely in communication with them. I would tell you the thing that specific training is up this year over last year. So that would lend me to tell you that, yes, they are engaged with that community and working to build those bridges.
Good, great.
And quick question from me. Do you have any idea why like the retention rate for our district was higher this year and why the numbers of our students have increased?
Well,
idea?
our retention rates have been consistently higher. And
Okay.
last year was also at 80%. To answer your question, no, I can't give you exact details as to why. I think the class offerings are getting a little more interesting with the medical programs. So I think it's appealing to a different level of kid, if you will. The communication to the parents and the pathways that are laid out to discuss what credits they can take forward with them, I think are also a big plus in a parent's mind as they look at sending their kid to a career center.
Okay.
The insight I got from a couple parents were that during
Please.
COVID, because they were doing hands-on.
Yep.
at CDC,
Sorry, Kathleen, can you turn your mic on that way?
During COVID, because they were doing hands-on and we were doing online, a lot of the students started feeling lost. So when we started that next school year, they sent their kids wanted to go do hands-on because we weren't sure. So some of these kids that wouldn't have tried it out, they tried it out, or their parents said, go over here.
Sure.
You know that you're going to be live and you're going to be doing this. So, I don't know if that's it, but at least the feedback that I've gotten from 4 parents I'm thinking of, that was what started it for them, was their, children knew they could be in person.
Right.
They could be actually doing hands-on activities.
It's nice to hear. Because I
Yeah,
know Dave
so-
worked really hard to keep the
Yeah.
building open.
That was
Make sure
huge.
they-
It
yeah.
was huge for a lot of kids.
Terrific.
Just one additional note, I've noticed on social media, the Valley Inn restaurant, it looks like it's going to be reopening.
Yes.
Any insight as to the best dish, or if people should call ahead to make
Come on the
reservations?
27th and you can explore it yourself. How's that?
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
All right, safety and security, Brittany and Tish.
No updates.
Okay. Schools Foundation report, Brittany.
Yep, I have one update at this time. So at the beginning of the school year, the Schools Foundation issues their annual classroom grants to their teachers for continuing to improve classroom enrichment. This year they issued $37,000 in classroom grants, so very exciting there. They do have a few new team members joining. I do not have their bios with me, so more to come in a formal introduction of those members.
Great.
So they used to have a video of the big reveal. Is that somewhere or am I missing that?
Since one of the Schools Foundation members has stepped down from her role, the extravagance of those videos has waned. So there is a list, and I will be happy to share that with you.
Very good. PSO report, Ellen.
The first PSO council meeting of the school year was on Thursday, September 8th. It was very well attended, which was nice to see. It was also very long. And since it was just the beginning of the 3rd day of school, most of the conversation was about the new school. And then just because of the timing of that meeting and the timing of this meeting, many of the events that were being talked about have already happened. One of the things that came up is happening next month. The Brecksville Kiwanis is hosting, after being off for 2 years, their annual trick or trot. It is going to be October 22nd at 8 a.m. at Blossom Hill. So, people can check out the new school building when they're up there if they choose to do that event. But the proceeds from the race are going to benefit recently resettled refugees that are attending BBH schools this year. So that's it.
Great. Thank you. Other board member reports. Anybody else have anything to share? No. So moving on, we're going to go to item 6, superintendent's announcements. And I will turn it over to Joelle.
Thank you.
And I'm going to quickly turn it over to Dr. Martin, who's going to give us a quick presentation on our strategic plan with some of our report card data from this year that just most recently came out.
Did you say quick?
I said quick, Dave. Emphasis on quick.
Mark, you want to set that 3-minute time?
No, you got 3.5. Go.
All right, I will try to be brief. You know how excited I get about these topics. So the strategic plan, again, we can figure out how it's broken into, it's largely the strategic plan. In the report card, there's one slide on the report card. So we can figure out how we want to do this strategic plan and then open it up for some Q&A or do both and talk about both of them. So just kind of frame in the times here. We can view our strategic plan pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. So it started in the fall of 2018 when we contracted the company. And the pandemic hit. There was a lot of work that was done in the fall and winter of 2019. The pandemic hit, that we had some very solid components that helped sustain us through the pandemic we're going to talk about. And then the post-pandemic is the present to the future. So just some quick background. In the fall of 2018, as I said, we contracted the company, did the work, lots of committee work, focus groups, steering committees, et cetera. And then in June of 2019, it was actually presented to the Board of Education. I know that seems like a million years ago. So just a quick visual, very diverse and I think well-represented group of folks participated in the design and development of the strategic plan. Again, over 100 participants, 80 in the steering committee, 60 plus in the focus groups, design committee, et cetera. Again, we had staff, students, administrators, community members, and local partners in there. But what came out of that work in the fall of 2018 really boiled down to 4 strategic focus areas: prepared students, engaged family and families, engaged community and families, responsive learning environments, and inclusive, supportive culture. And again, there's some descriptors in the middle. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in the next slide. And I'm not going to read this all to you, but just kind of give you a flavor of what the strategic plan has in it. So for prepared students, again, kind of right up my alley, and the reason why we come to work every day: implement evidence-based instructional practices that maximize student learning. For engaged community and families, engage families and community members with ongoing communication. Again, trying to do the best we possibly can to reach out and improve our communication every day, every week, every month. Responsive learning environments, create effective learning environments for student well-being and achievement. That's not forgetting about the social emotional needs of our students. And inclusive, supportive culture. Again, we have here Live the Culture Playbook throughout the district. That was something that endured, the Culture Playbook and the Portrait of a Graduate, that really kind of sustained us through the pandemic. So through a lot of, when the pandemic hit, through a lot of conversation and feedback, sort of mini needs analysis and dialogue, we decided that we would stay with the Culture Playbook and the Portrait of a Graduate. The strategic plan is a 25-page document. It's a 5-year plan from 2019 to 2024. We believe that these 2 items were things that resonated with our students, our staff, and that we could sustain us through those very, very difficult times, and it proved to be true. So kind of fast forwarding to last spring, we kind of dusted off the strategic plan and wanted to do a restart or a reboot. And Joelle and myself began the conversation again, brought in the building principals, Todd and Kevin and Colleen, and really took a lot of feedback from our administration, from our staff, just kind of talking and getting a feel for where we were at. Lots and lots of reflection and needs analysis. We actually color-coded the strategic plan in the focus areas to green, completed, yellow, in progress, ongoing, and red, not started. And what came out of all of that was it kind of boiled down to, we needed to have an organizational focus, sort of a systems thinking way about the district, get back to who is BBHCSD? What do we stand for and what do we want to accomplish? So that was the spring and June and July. Fast forward again to August. That was our administrative retreat. Took a real deep dive into SMART goals. I just copied and pasted what our outcomes were for the days in August at our administrative retreat. We really mixed it up. We had a workshop type of setup where our central office administrators were conducting breakout sessions. So I was with Cindy, Craig and Bob were together for tech and finance, Joel and Jim were together for leadership, and Chris and Brian were together with HR and business services. We took that opportunity to meet with our administrators, really create some facilitative dialogue and see what their needs were in the departments and buildings. Again, I set the outcome as gathering information through those breakout sessions to formulate goals, focusing on the organization that would meet their needs for the 22-23 school year and beyond. On Friday, we actually instituted a Gantt chart. So every department and every building utilized a Gantt chart to begin the work of writing those goals and action plans. Just a quick example of a Gantt chart. I threw it up here. For those of you who don't know, a Gantt chart is just a project management tool that keeps organizations, teams, individual people on task to complete certain things. On the far left here, we have the goals and the action steps. Moving right, the task owner, you put in a start date and end date. It'll automatically calculate the number of days that you have to complete that goal or action step, and it'll color code it as well. So progress monitoring, again, this was a lot of good, meaningful work that we did at the administrative retreat. Lots of feedback, lots of facilitated dialogue, really honing in on what those needs are in the departments and the buildings with the focus of the organization. And many of our building leaders and department leaders said, Dave, we need to go back and we need to talk to our folks, our leaders, our teacher leaders, our department chairs, our building leadership team, and to help us formulate those action steps to see it through. Again, I mentioned this is just not a one and done. Some of these goals are really, really deep goals and multi-year goals that will last for several years. We also changed up the way we're going to meet and collaborate as a leadership team this year. Our monthly collaborative professional learning meetings will be conducted like mini retreats. So we've already conducted one. So every half an hour, they rotate through the different departments, and we have an opportunity to check in, see how the Gantt chart goals and action steps are going, see how we can support them, what resources they need. And again, with the focus on the organization, BBHCSD, more of a systems thinking. So we'll just start off with the middle school, because I like you. And again, I'm just going to give you a little sample of some of the goals. These are they are not complete. It's a work in progress. They are working through some of the action steps with their leaders in their respective buildings and departments. So again, a lot of fine tuning. You're going to see some of the action steps aren't even completed yet. That's okay. So the middle school, after lots of data analysis, facilitated dialogue, and some challenging back and forth, they decided that one of the goals that they wanted to set was to really hone in on the achievement of students with disabilities and increase that achievement. So some of the action steps there were develop an internal monitoring team. I believe that has already started this week. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, Dave. Craig, can you make that a little bigger?
It's going to be tough to read.
Yeah, at
Sorry.
least so we can see some of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you want to scroll down a little bit here. No. Middle school. Keep going. The fuchsia color, the one that matches your shirt. So continuing with the middle school, again, I brought the book here, Collective Teacher Efficacy. That is the notion and the idea that collective groups can, when they believe their constituents can, in this case, students can succeed, that impact has a greater magnitude. So they want to really increase that collective teacher efficacy in those teacher teams. One of the nice things is at the administrative retreat, while we had smaller groups by buildings and departments, many of the schools came out with some similar goals. One of them was to continue along with working through the competencies of the portrait of a graduate. And I believe the middle school will be developing a tool to measure that competency, those competencies when they exit 8th grade, which is outstanding. Scrolling down, high school, again, that's Kevin's team. They too value the competencies in the portrait of a graduate and are looking at ways in which they can strengthen those competencies with their students. Again, going along with the high school, they have gone down the path of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, which is a very, very promising way to set up learning environments when you take in consideration and set up a learning environment that's going to accommodate all of your strongest learners, as well as all of your learners that experience the most difficulties, and removing all the barriers in between so that you're meeting the needs of all students, high, low, medium. So that's exciting. It's kind of the get to know and why year for their staff, and they've already begun to roll that out. They have also felt that there is still a need for that social emotional learning component, and they have embedded that in the colony period. Moving on to the elementary, again, they didn't want to get too far away from the portrait of a graduate either, so they embedded their goals with the different quadrants. Again, you're probably hearing some similarities with our strategic plan, whether it's implicit or explicit. So one of the goals for the elementary was working in collaborative teams in 22-23, implement data analysis meetings to inform instructional practices to ensure an increase in learning for all students. So really delving into what do data meetings look like? How do you ask data-driven questions? How do you ask facilitated questions of colleagues? So that work has already begun as well. So moving down here, elementary also believed it was meaningful to continue along with, I was Jim Gilbride was still here, with the community and family engagement, and they've actually begun to explore possibilities of working with CVCC at the elementary level. And I think colleagues already met, and those action steps are moving forward. And then the final goal, again, this is a really, really meaty sort of a multi-year goal. This is with the emotional prepare quadrant, working on that, building resiliency with students, growth mindset, flexible thinkers, etc. And they have mentioned, again, the collective teacher efficacy, getting whole groups of teachers to collectively believe they have an impact on student learning. Academically, it makes sense. In practice, very difficult to do. I'd just like to finish up with just two examples from our departments. This is Fonzie's with transportation, and his goal is to improve the overall structure of transportation, of the transportation department. And he is trying to think about unique ways to increase staffing and bring in more drivers. Again, he's got more than just one goal. It's just an example. And then I would like to finish up with Amy Voigt, our new food service supervisor. This is just, this kind of warms my heart. So she, without prompting from me, she came up with this goal: create innovative and student-focused menus that fuel their bodies and minds for a successful school day. One of her action plans is to conduct student surveys for feedback. So I think that's just spot on. That's very much an organizational focus. That is it for the strategic plan. We could delve right into the report card, or do we want to stop, talk, and then hit the report card? I'm good either way.
I think maybe if we pause here and then see what questions and comments the board has.
Dr. Martin, just to clarify, what do we have defined measurables to note each milestone within each goal for their time frame and metrics that are associated with those milestones?
I knew you were going to ask that question. Knew it. And we actually talked about that in many of our breakout sessions at the retreat, as well as our first administrative work last few weeks ago. Some were asking, can we put a column in there that would delineate how it's measured? And yeah, I've been doing this for a few years, and it's a tough balance, because I don't want it to become a check the box, because it can become that. I mean, it's a 25-page document, and this is just a very, very brief view. So we're working on ways on how we can better measure it. It might be more quantitative or qualitative and more informal, such as this, where more examples of student examples of success. Because if you go the other direction, you have to have a little bit of that quantitative measure, but you also need the real stories in the field about what's going on. So that's a great question. We're still working that out. I think if I didn't show it to you, but I think there's embedded surveys to staff and students in there, and that can act as quantitative data. We just have to figure out a way we're going to put it in here. If I could show you the entire Gantt chart, it's actually 3 years. So this is just the first year. So many of these goals are going to continue for years to come.
And is there an expected, so I know this is just a snapshot in time for the efforts that have been done so far. Is there an expectation around when you'd like to see these goals built for the teams to start working through in a more concerted way?
Yes, so the teachers are working on their professional growth plans. They do August 1st or October, August, so we fast forwarding. So they have been working, and they have seen many of they've seen the Gantt charts that the buildings have done. So they're trying to build their professional goals off of what the building is focusing on, which inevitably is what the district is focusing on. So your question was time?
Time for identifying the goal and then the milestones that'll support the progress towards that goal. Is there a defined timeline for having that?
Each
confirmed?
month we'll be checking. So they're not, the way the Gantt chart is supposed to work is when you set the action step and you set the time, it says 277 days. Again, there needs to be some refinement there. At some point, she's going to say, well, I didn't start this yet, but it's going to start in November or whenever, or October, and then it'll populate. So then when we meet, I can say, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Have we completed that survey? Have we completed the data analysis protocol, whatever? So it's more on a monthly basis with me as they circulate through the meetings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would just add to that, that a lot of these goals, it's not a race to the end point. So
Sure.
there's not a timeline set to say this goal needs to be accomplished by, June of 20, whatever. It's ongoing. So as you get through and you do that action step and you've achieved that action step, the goal is really, how is it embedded within our practice on a daily basis? That's the end goal. And so whenever that happens. And until we get to that point, you might have short-term timelines to implement this particular part of an action step, but we don't ever want it to be that, we set a timeline and we said, okay, yes, we got there. It's got to be this ongoing cyclical thing where it just becomes embedded, and your evidence is that you can actually see it being embedded in the day-to-day instruction.
True.
Okay, I'm just maybe I'm still a little confused because maybe I'm too end goal oriented, but I hear what you're saying, but is it going to roll out? Okay, she wants to conduct, Ms. White wants to conduct a survey for students for feedback, and you conduct it. And I know you say you don't want it to be a check the box, but there has to be a data analysis. And then what do you do
With it.
from there? Because technically you've met your action step once she conducts the survey. So what are we doing with that information? How does this become a living document that you're going to, I'm just confused a little bit about how you continue to improve past the action step.
Again, I think it's those monthly check-ins. So
Okay.
We need to check in as central office as we collaborate with our buildings and our departments, and check in and say, did that protocol get developed for that data meeting? Give me some examples, talk to me, by asking facilitated questions, we can get some of that information back. A lot of that's soft data in a way, but I would prefer that because I want to know what the impact is with student learning. So I think this is the first time we've ever had the same template across the board in the district. So I want this to get better. I mean, maybe next year at this time, I think it'll be a little clearer. And I think it'll be a little more organized. We're trying to do this because we believe there needs to be organizational focus. So hopefully it'll improve. What else?
So the meetings that we had before pre-COVID, I think they were over up at the high school. How did we integrate some of that? Like, I'm thinking of the environmental, like I kept hearing a central message that they wanted to see us more environmentally conscious.
Yeah.
So I know we're not saying the whole thing, but how did we take what the community had wanted and embed that in this? Because it seems like it's driven just by leadership.
Yeah, and it's very much driven by instruction and student learning, which is good. But I understand what you're saying, because if you do, I think there was one of those was there was a financial component as well, that we would be, good financial stewards, et cetera. But we would, and I do remember, again, it's a 25-page document. I think there's a lot of it that we still need to address. There was talk over in late spring and summer about some other leadership moves where we could help facilitate some of the things that we haven't touched, that are red, that haven't been started. And I think that's one of them that we really.
I think you were at those meetings. It would be nice to see. I mean, that was a lot of time that was spent pre-pandemic, and it was a very big message that they wanted to see some environmental sustainable changes here. And we had even started a committee. So I understand this. I do the growth plan and I get that, but the community needs to be heard as well. So I'm curious, is there a way to take this where that's kind of integrated? At least one of the goals is like community input, where we start embedding some of that under the leadership, where, like food service, that'd be an example of the trays that they had wanted, where they weren't disposable. They wanted something, and we talked about that. So that person was not here when that all occurred. So how do we take all that feedback from our community and push it to somebody who wasn't around when that happened? That's kind of what I would hope to see. I think goals are good, but I know that schools are good at doing things in vacuums too, where people feel left out and they feel unheard. So like, I'm just wondering, that was huge. Those meetings I thought were very insightful.
So we embedded some of that into our Portrait of the Graduate under Globally Responsible. One of those attributes is being an environmental steward. So it's definitely a focus. We also, some of that feedback that we got from that meeting has been implemented in the new building. So we have the regular trays. We got rid of the disposable trays. They wanted to do recycling and composting, all evidence that we listened to what they had to say, and we see evidence of all of that at our building. So, while we try to keep our strategic plan academic and building focus as to what the needs were at the building, I think we took some of that feedback and implemented many of those things rather than setting an actual goal for that.
I know that we plan to go back in, and again, it's a 25-page document. There's a lot that we need to revisit and do a deeper dive and continually kind of reflect and
Sure,
think.
it's dynamic. So
Yeah,
and I get that. We exist because of the community. So I just want to always remind ourselves of that we sometimes get lost in where we're going with instruction or academics, and that's been a message continually that's been brought to us. So I heard what you're saying. It'd be nice to see it as an action plan where what you said, you pulled it out, put it under food service, and look, we heard you, and here's what we've done. That'd be a great to have that there. And we continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a question, the goals that were formulated at the building level, what was done to make sure that the sum adds up to more than the parts, like that they were synthesized so that, you don't have one building focusing in one area and another building in a completely different area. And while they might do some good things, if they're all blended together, you want to all be pulling in the same direction, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's recognizing the different needs of the different buildings. Obviously, elementary has different needs in middle and different needs in the high school. We know that, as well as the populations of our students. And I just know that when I have that precious time with building level administrators and departments, I ask a lot of facilitative questions. And, I don't think it was coincidental that they all wanted to continue on with the competencies in the Portrait of a Graduate. And I don't think it was coincidental that they wanted to strengthen their teams, through this notion of collective teacher efficacy. So yes, was it part leadership on my part? Yes, but I think also over the years, we're trending towards more of an organizational and a systems way of thinking. We're not there yet. We still need to improve there in some areas more than others. But I understand what you're saying, and that's a focus that I want to get at. And I'm not happy, totally happy yet. We'll get there. So it's a systems, and we're a big district, 3,700 students. So thanks. The only one out? No, nothing?
Okay.
Nothing.
All right, report card.
Report card. And again, this is a 50,000 foot view. I just took a snapshot of the website, and it's not interactive. So it's kind of, I'm going to try to keep it at that level. It's a rating system. It's not a letter grade system, 5-star rating system this year. There are 6 components, 5 of which that all districts got rated on. They did not get rated on the college, career, workforce, and military readiness yet. I think that's coming out in 24, 25. But from the outset, we did very, very well. I'm very pleased with our progress. We still need to improve. We still need to get better. We understand that, but we have to be very proud of where we're at and where we were and where we're going, particularly with what you saw with the organizational focus and the Gantt charts. So let's just start quickly with achievement. And again, 5 stars, highest rating, significantly exceeds state standards in academic achievement. This is the traditional performance index. We received or earned a 104.7 performance index. That's taking the performance level categories and weighting them. I think it's a fairly stable and true measure of districts, but it's just not out in the open. It's sort of buried in the achievement. So again, 5 stars in achievement. Progress is what we've traditionally known as value added. There are a little bit, there are different metrics. It's still value added, but they use some different metrics. They also calculate in, I believe, effect size for magnitude. But the value added is for grades 4 through 8 and EOCs to measure growth expected for particular groups of students compared to similar groups of students in the state. And we earned 5 stars there so that we made significant evidence of exceeding what was the expected growth targets. Our gap closing, I think we should be very proud of that. If you have 15 or more in a particular subgroup, that could be socioeconomic group, students of color, students who do not speak English as a native language, students with disabilities. We also exceeded in that category with 5 stars. The state sets goals, and we exceeded all of those goals. Those goals will be going up in the coming years, and I anticipate us to continue to work hard to meet those learning gaps with our subgroups. I would just like to say that it is my goal in this position to eliminate all achievement gaps with our subgroups. We're getting there. We're not there yet. Graduation, 5 stars, significantly exceeds, and that's both in the 4-year and 5-year category. Early literacy, 4 stars. We still exceeded the state standards of early literacy. This is the highest ranking we've gotten. I've got my own opinions about this. I kind of expressed them over the years, but it is what it is. It's still an improvement, and it still is the highest rating we have gotten. And again, there was no rating in the college, career, workforce, and military readiness. Very, very much a 50,000 foot view. If you go into the website, you can kind of dig down. There's all kinds of component grades that can be disaggregated. I will say that we have delved deeply into some of these. My instructional coaches have disaggregated some of the data and sent that out to whole grade levels. So teachers are viewing data from students they had this year, from last year, and planning accordingly. Questions, comments, insights?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to make an overall comment, which is an expression of gratitude from the board to all of our staff, because collectively, this is a reflection of what type of educational services we're providing to our community. So from the top of the house, at Joelle, through the administration, all the way down, certainly the teachers on the front line, the aides, to everyone, food service, custodial staff, bus drivers, we are one organization. And I think we can all take pride in the wonderful job that our staff has done to help achieve these types of results. I know these types of report cards are not perfect, and there's going to be problems in any type of effort to measure, but they do reflect something I think most people have sensed, which is, we are a premier district in Northeast Ohio and in the state, and these types of measurements help demonstrate that. And so kudos and congratulations to all of our staff.
Exactly where the credit goes, and our students.
Students and families too, because they're part of the three-legged stool.
We are up. So we had a 101 performance index last year, and so 104.7. So we are trending in the right direction. Still want to get better.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah,
All right.
just thank you. That's
Thank you.
really great results.
Okay. That was the last slide. Had to make it even.
Thanks, Dr. Martin.
Yeah, item 6C is an enrollment discussion. So
Yeah, I
will
just,
turn it-
Craig and I had some long talks about, where we are going with enrollment. And so we just wanted to have a conversation at a board meeting so that everyone kind of understands, where we're at. When we closed our 3 elementary schools last year, we had 1,500 kids enrolled in those 3 elementary schools, with the understanding that we might get a few kids to come and join because the building is new. It turned out that we had over 200 kids join our elementary school over the course of the summer. And to this day, we still are enrolling kids that have moved into the district. Our elementary school has also seen an increase in students with ELL. We have several refugees from the Ukraine that are at the elementary school. I think we're up to 20 just at the elementary school. We have some kids that are coming in that have no English language. They are here. And so 200 kids is the pace of which Olentangy City Schools in Columbus has grown, to the point of which they had to build 4 new schools because they were getting 200 kids every single year. So this is not a normal growth, and it is certainly not a normal growth in a year. The board does know that we did 3 different enrollment studies when we started on this project to build this building, and in none of those 3 reports would have anticipated this. I did talk to some of my other colleagues around Cleveland and around the Youngstown area who also had recently opened buildings to see if they had experienced the same type and rate of growth that we've seen this year in particular. Strongsville did see the same thing. So they opened up their new building. They got a surge of new students that enrolled, and over a 5-year period, it came back down to what their normal rate or increase would be in a year. Austintown and Youngstown area experienced the same type of thing. So this was not something that was predicted. It was not something that certainly we had planned for. As we monitored over the summer, we knew our class sizes were getting a little high, but not as high as what they are now. Many of these kids that have enrolled, we've had over 35 kids enroll in the elementary school since school has started. That has really, brought those numbers up. So, we had a conversation Monday at our cabinet meeting to say, look, here's our numbers. We've got class sizes at any given grade level at the elementary school sitting anywhere from 25 kids to 28 kids in any particular grade. We have been proactive in that we hired, with some of our ESSER money that we received, we hired 5 tutors. They're certified teachers to work with those kids to help alleviate some of those larger class sizes, especially in those grade levels where we see a significant growth, particularly in second and third grade. And in addition, we've just posted for more positions. Last year, as you know, we did RIF some positions. Most of those were in the related arts areas, as well as some areas in special ed. Of those kids that have moved into our district, of those 200 kids, we've experienced a large number of kids that are coming into us already on IEPs, 504s who require special education services. So we have since posted for some additional support in those areas of special ed so that we can minimize those numbers. At the time that we were staffing last year, again, we had our caseloads. We were, well below those caseloads. Those caseloads are starting to rise now with the influx of the kids. And so we're looking at staffing. It's very difficult to be proactive when you don't know the numbers that you're dealing with, to have the right amount of staff in place at the start of the school. And certainly when you're still getting an influx at 35, that's more than a class size of kids coming in after school starts. It's very hard to manage on the fly. And so we're doing our best to monitor. It got to a point where I said to Craig, I said, this is not acceptable. We have to do something. So we started to post for some other positions. People are concerned about space. One of the reasons we designed the building the way we designed it at the elementary school was to have that collaborative space. In an ideal world, we're bringing those kids out and there's really not these classroom hubs of kids. They're being taught together collaboratively, kids from different classrooms that might be on the same level for reading. So instead of thinking about your own 25 or 26 kids, you're thinking, I've got 20 kids in this pod or this grade level that are reading at a certain level. One teacher can take all of those kids from that. And so really thinking about how we're instructing kids differently, but definitely posting and providing some support. And we wanted to talk about it because certainly more teachers that we have to hire, even if it is a short-term thing, that we're seeing this for the next couple of years and then it starts to go back, definitely impacts the bottom line in terms of budget. We spend 86% of our budget here in Broadview Heights on staffing. And so it's definitely, for every person that we add, it's definitely impacting our budget in a different way. And not that we're making decisions based solely on money, but it's certainly something that we are charged to manage and be responsible for, at the same time providing the best services that we can for our kids. So it's achieving or trying to achieve that balance between, we know that maybe this might be a temporary thing, temporary meaning a 5-year thing that we're experiencing this rapid growth. It may end next year. It may be that our incoming kindergarten class is not that big, but we have to monitor it and we have to make decisions as we go. We can't proactively hire people to say just in case. It's not fiscally responsible at all for us to do that. We have to continue to monitor, look at our data and look at our numbers. And this is our current reality. Craig, you can chime in a little bit with how it impacts our budget based on the number of positions we're looking to fill for, coming up here very soon to provide support at the elementary school.
Yeah, so we're going to look at this for the November forecast now that we're looking at this. And I think that they're trying to troubleshoot this at the elementary school just to see how much staffing that we need, but it looks like it might be 2 to 3 staff members that are needed. We will be shifting around some of those ESSER dollars because we actually have some very good tutors that may be good candidates for those positions. So that stuff will be coming out. So we'll just have to play it by ear. And we're in a healthy financial position, but at the same time, this is that year where we're going to be barely positive or start to deficit spend, as we all kind of know. So as we make these decisions, I'll be working on the forecast up until probably the deadline this year in November, so we can get the best information we can just to see where this does kind of put us. But realizing that, obviously we're here for the kids, right? And so those class sizes are big for an elementary school. And so hopefully, again, that we've seen locally that, we do kind of hope it's a bump, but you can't predict that, what's going on right now. So there were also some talks that maybe some of this in kindergarten, which now it's more expanded, but some of it could still be people that were a year delayed from COVID, the people that held kids back over the past couple of years. So I think we'll kind of see more as this comes through next year, and we'll just keep monitoring it.
Joelle, how was the growth in our elementary building? How does that compare to growth at the middle school and high school? Like, did we see a similar growth in those buildings, or is this really the new building?
It's really the new building. We actually, and not just because we pulled fifth grade out of the middle school, but we saw there's a decrease at the middle school. So they're under 800 kids. When I started 7 years ago, we were at 900. So our enrollment projections in terms of looking at district numbers are still in line with those projections, except for at the elementary school. Last year, we had over 1,300 kids at the high school. This year, we're down to 1,200. So our growth is going down, just like at the enrollment projections stated that they would. We have this influx of kids at the elementary school, and we did some checking around, and there are lower enrollments at St. Albert the Great and at Assumption. So one has to assume that maybe some of those parents decided to bring their kids to our school as well because their enrollments are down. So it's something that I think we're just experiencing right now at the elementary school.
So do we have total enrollment numbers, or do we do those in October?
I have total enrollment numbers as of, oh my gosh, let me put on the 2 pairs of glasses I brought so I make sure I can see. As of September 26th, there's a total of 1,700 kids at the elementary school, 794 at the middle school, 1,231 at the high school, for a total of 3,700 kids, 3,744 kids in the district total. That is about 200 kids more than where we were last year when, and certainly in the spring when we closed in June or in May.
But oddly, like when I got here in 2020 before the pandemic as well, like we were at 3,700. And so the growth is in the elementary school for sure. But in terms of where we were 2 years ago as a district, we're actually about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and I'm sorry, there's no questions from the public. There's a time for public comment. So it's not open to just anybody ask a question. So sorry. So there's obviously staffing impacts, and we're looking at that, and we have some open positions. You know, what about space at the building?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the design of the building was to allow in those collaborative spaces, places where we can group and think about how we're instructing kids differently. We did a lot of design with that so that we could do exactly what I was just saying. Instead of looking at your own class of 25 or 26 kids, you know, are there kids in multiple classes that have the same need, that we can bring those kids together out in the collaborative space? So while the kids sitting in the classrooms, it may be high, we're decreasing the instructional practices. So we have a certified teacher that's going to come in and work with a group of 25 kids who's going to be teacher of record in reading instruction, and they might be all those kids at the same level, and the same thing for math. So we're trying to decrease the instructional group size, not necessarily the class size, because it is okay. We have plenty of room in the field house if we have 28 kids in a class to go have PE or some of those special related arts classes, not so much when we're trying to do some direct instruction in terms of language arts and math.
Right. And I recall when we were going through the whole design of the building, we were trying to size it, right? We looked at the projections, enrollment projections. We talked about maybe we'll get a bump, you know, how can we handle that? And I know one of the themes that TDA had emphasized to us was that at any point in time, a lot of your building isn't going to have any students in it, you know, like the collaborative spaces. And so, you know, should we experience unprecedented growth, you know, you could leverage that space.
Definitely.
And it sounds like that's what we're looking at doing a little bit more of, and
Yeah.
and down the road, right? I mean, if worst case scenario, we get another 200 new students next year or whatever. I mean, I guess the broader picture is that there is open space in the new building that could be leveraged, as well as when we look at utilizing our entire campus. You know, you can move a grade level from one building to another if there's more capacity at one building and less at another. And that's not to say that that's anything that is happening, or I'm just saying that in terms of, like I saw, there was some parent who sent an email saying, well, you're going to keep, hey, we're getting crowded. Are you going to keep one of the old buildings? Right. And it's like, from a capacity standpoint, district wide, we have plenty of space for all of our students and to absorb additional growth. But there may need to be some creativity if growth still starts exceeding all expectations.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah, very fair statement. I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to.
Well,
we just as an example, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but just as an example, and we had the fifth grade at the middle school with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for 3 years. And while it was crowded, is that something that we could do? Yes, because when Todd and I had a conversation, you look at numbers, the 8th grade next year, for example, leaving out of 8th grade and going into the high school, and the incoming 6th grade class, there's about a 50 kid difference to less. So we're leaving, 280 are leaving. I think we've got like 230 coming in or something like that. So, you know, if we had to make a move where we took a grade level and moved it around to a different building, could we do that? Yes. So capacity in the district is not even remotely close to being filled. You know, but are we having some growing pains right now? Yes. Are we addressing it? Absolutely. We have lockers that are coming in because we have some kids that are sharing lockers right now. But again, the building was spec'd for 25 kids per classroom based on those enrollment projections that we had done 3 different times over a period of time. And so the building was built to that right now in terms of furniture and lockers. So we placed another order for furniture. So we have furniture coming. We're adding some more lockers in there. And we're spending that money now because this is our current reality. We have 200 more kids in that building than what we're anticipated. But we want to be careful that we don't continue to spend to accommodate a 200 person growth, accommodate what we need to, and, you know, keep watching these enrollment trends to see if we have to do an additional move, because every time we add more money in 10 years, that building might not have it's certainly not going to have 1,700 kids. It may not even have 1,500 kids in it. So we have to be very careful about how we're allocating funds to accommodate what we have right now and think of it long term. The building was designed to outlive all of us in this room, and we have to keep that in mind, that if we're looking at projections, we're looking at growth and trends, the community as a whole is not trending for a larger population in terms of our schools.
Yeah, and I would just remind everyone also, I mean, we designed that building 3 years ago before the pandemic hit. And so a lot changes. And I know part of the conversation that we had as we were designing the building, because you're trying to thread the needle so that it's the right size. Well, what's the right size? You know, 3 years later, you get an influx, then, the question is, how can you handle that influx? The worst scenario would be you built it too big, and the community is saying, why are there 5 classrooms that are empty, right? Because you've got too much space, like you overbuilt. And as part of that conversation, I know the architect talked about leveraging that collaborative space, that when you talk about what happens if you fill up or you're running out of room, the individual classrooms have some capacity limits, but there are a lot of spillover areas in the collaborative pods that can be leveraged to move students around throughout the day. The other thing is, and we did talk about this, the middle school today used to be the high school, right? Central school used to be the main school for the whole thing. Then it was, so it's not uncommon for districts to shift student populations amongst buildings based on capacity. So when we talked about sizing that building, part of the calculus was to look at what is our capacity at the middle school and the high school, and should we have a need, you can always shift students over. So it was about threading the needle. And again, this is a healthy conversation to have, but the takeaway shouldn't be, hey, we're going to start moving grades around, or the building's full and we can't fit any more students. It's just a recognition that we've seen a healthy bump, and that's causing some staffing challenges that we're looking at. And if the trend continues, we still are fine as a district with capacity from a building standpoint. Other comments or questions? Okay, well, keep us apprised.
Oh, I will.
All right, we're going to move on to item 7A, treasurer's announcements. I'll turn it over to Craig. Perfect. We'll move on to item 8, hearing of community communications, hearing of the public. And I believe there are some, so I will read this. Persons wishing to address the Board of Education may do so at this point. No formal action will be taken on subjects that are not included on this agenda until the board has had an opportunity to study them. Comments regarding personnel must be submitted in writing through the office of the superintendent in order for the board to complete the planned agenda in an effective and efficient manner, and to provide sufficient opportunities for members of the public to be heard. Hearing of the public shall be limited to a maximum of 60 minutes, during which each speaker shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. And so just as a reminder too, if you didn't glean it from that little blurb. This is not, hearing of the public is just for people of the public to make comments and we will hear them. We are not, it's not a question and answer. It's not a dialogue. If you have questions that you want to engage us or the staff on, this isn't the best forum to do it. You could reach out to Joelle, you could email, call board members, what have you. So I will be putting a timer on just so that we treat everybody fairly. So you will have 3 minutes, and if anybody exceeds 3 minutes, you'll start hearing the timer go off. And if you could just wrap up your comments, that would be great.
Will?
Yes, you would go up to the podium. Is the microphone on?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about
I'm sorry, it's a name, address.
Fair. Will
Sure.
Ely, I live at 10340 Whitewood Road in Brecksville. So I wanted to talk about the Pay School app specifically, the one that the parents can pay fees on. I had put a post on Facebook about a month ago and it got a lot of interesting responses, which I thought was interesting. But I don't know if you guys are aware as the board, like the kindergarten fee, the kindergarten tuition is $2,700, which that's neither here nor there in this particular issue. But the app is charging an additional fee of $120 just to pay that fee to the community members. So if I wanted to pay with a credit card, I'm charged $2,820. I feel like the fees on there. When I pay my son's lunch, we put $40 in his lunch account. It charges me an extra $4.40 for that. So the fees that are coming through with the Pay School app, I think they're unreasonable. Especially, like I'm a teacher, my wife's a teacher. It's not like we have these huge budgets that I know are in the district and things like that. So those little fees add up, especially then once my son starts sports and things like that, other school activities, paying his lunch fees and all of that. It is just so. And I know, because I have friends that like live in the apartment district and things like that. And I know that we're comparing apples and oranges there in a lot of ways, but they don't pay fees to pay their school fees. And I don't understand why we are choosing to pay fees to pay our school fees. And then I guess the other thing that I would like to be curious to know is if the district itself is paying also to use the Pay School app. Because if they are, then we as taxpayers are paying twice. We're paying the fee twice. And that just seems completely unreasonable. The other fee that I kind of wanted to discuss was the $2,700 or $2,800 kindergarten fee. My understanding is that if you paid that fee by a certain time, I don't know what the date was, it was $100 less than what it is now when I open up the Pay School app. It says I owe $2,800. To me, that comes across as a tax on being not wealthy and being able to pay $2,700 out of pocket in one go. Like I said, my wife and I are both teachers. I have a budget that I got to stick to every month, and $2,700 in one go is not a thing that I budgeted for. So getting the $120 fee for Pay Schools plus the extra $100 fee for not being able to pay everything all at once just seems like it's piling on, if that makes sense. So I would appreciate if you guys could take a minute to look into those things, reconsider them, all of that. Also, and for what it's worth, my son's kindergarten teacher, Miss Lindway, has been doing a phenomenal job. So I thought I'd share that feedback with you too. She's been very communicative and awesome and very warm towards him. So it's been great. But that's it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Just as a quick comment too, any questions about fees and whatnot, that gentleman right there is the one to contact. I'm sure he can answer all your questions and concerns, and you're always welcome to reach out to board members too. But I think Craig can probably answer your questions.
Bonnie Jill Pizak.
My name is Bonnie Joe Pizak. I live at 8284 Wyatt Road, Broadview Heights. I've been driving bus for the Brecksville School District since 1980. I've been an onboard instructor since 1998. My first and utmost priority of my job is the safety of our children. That being said, I'm seeing a lot of problems with the way the buses are dropping the students off and picking them up. At the high school, the buses come in the morning. There's a sidewalk at the middle school. We pull up between the sidewalk there and the guardrail and drop the kids off. There's a painted sidewalk, crosswalk. The students are walking in both directions. It's like salmon fighting upstream, each way. There are cones reminding the students not to walk in front of the cars or out of line. They're nothing to protect the students or remind the students not to walk in front of a 7-ton school bus. So as we're pulling up, kids are getting off, walking in both directions. Kids are coming out of the lane, walking in front of the school buses. As we're coming up and we have to make a left-hand turn. When we make a left-hand turn, they have what they call tail swings. So when we're turning, the back end of our bus swings to the right. The kids are walking out there pushing while we're watching to make sure we don't hit the kids in the crosswalk. All of a sudden, there's a student standing in front of us. It's very, very dangerous. Also, the kids that are being dropped off for out-of-district buses, they walk down to the sidewalk. There's a crosswalk. There's buses here. There's buses here. These kids are walking between the back of one bus and the front of another bus within a 10-foot danger zone. State of Ohio, our school website mentioned that there's a 10-foot danger zone. Nobody should be within 10 feet of a bus. The most dangerous parts are directly in front of it and by any of the tires. In the afternoon at the high school, when we're picking up, the buses are angled to the right. We pull up to a white line. It's about 20 inches wide. When I pull up to that white line, the front fender mirrors are sticking out there. The crosswalk is there. I can't count how many kids have already banged their heads on my crosswalks because all the students, kids will be kids, get off the bus, not all of them, but majority of them. They all have earbuds in and they're all playing on their electronic devices. They are not paying attention to us. They come in, they have to walk in between the buses to get around the door to get in the bus. There is less than 33 inches between the side of the door of one bus and the side of the other bus. That means we have students walking within 18 inches of the bus when there's a 10-foot danger zone. We also have many kids up at the high school that are still running in between buses. They're coming from the right, from the left, and then they're running in between buses. They run between the front row buses. They run between the second row of the buses to get to their parents that are parked down by the tennis courts. Again, very dangerous. First couple of days, they had a lot of teachers there. The quantity of teachers, the quality has diminished. And these kids, today I counted 7 kids running in between buses. One of these kids is going to slip, fall, drop something underneath the bus, and the driver's not going to see him. And it's a danger
I'm
waiting to
sorry,
happen.
but the timer ran out. It was on mute, so it didn't go off. But so if you could just wrap up.
Okay, and then there's equal concerns at the elementary school. Because we're not being consistent with the rules. Drivers are telling the kids to stay 10 feet away and the teachers are bringing them across in front. It's safety, and I'm very concerned that a kid's going to be hurt.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Yeah,
Hopefully
thank
you've
you.
shared them with transportation supervisor.
Okay. Keith McMillan.
Hi, my name is Keith McMillan. I live at 8489 Settlers Passage. I've got a 2nd grader and a 6th grader. I was happy to hear about your conversation about class sizes because that was one of my major issues. My daughter in 2nd grade with 26 other students. I do disagree with the idea of using that centralized space because I know that it's distracting for students when they're trying to learn and they hear other people within close proximity. But I understand that that is maybe the only option to reduce learning sizes, not necessarily class size. I think you should fire whoever gave you those projections because as Brecksville's building a new pool and you're building a new elementary school, for you to say we're going to have declining class size, I think that was irresponsible on their part. I think they completely misled you, and I'm sorry that that happened, but I know that the community has had consistently and told you several times that they disagreed with those assessments and that they thought that you needed to build a little bit bigger. I think that you would have less upset parents if you did build a little bit bigger. As I know that you said that you're worried about having oversized buildings, and I don't think that in a place that we want to be a premier district, having smaller class sizes or a little bit more space around our students, that you'd have complaints about class sizes. I do also look forward to hearing about the transportation discussion. I'm hoping that it will address the hour-long wait that we have to get before my daughter gets home from elementary school. It takes her half an hour to get on the bus. And then the bus drivers are great and they get her home within half an hour. But if I pick her up, if I'm at the back of the line of the car pickup line, there are still buses being loaded half an hour later while I'm going through to get my daughter. So I'm really hoping that you can figure out a better way to load the buses instead of what I understand from her, and she's in second grade, that it's 10 at a time. When at the middle school, I know that you do line up, and maybe having grids on the playground where there aren't cars and aren't people traveling around, maybe with that 10-foot space around the buses would help load the buses more efficiently so that you can cut down that hour-long transportation for her to get home. Thank you very much.
Thank you for,
Sorry, I think I have about 2 more seconds. Composting at the elementary school is not a thing, I was told, and I look forward to hearing if it does become a thing.
thank you for your comments.
Todd Stample.
Hello, my name's Todd Stample. I live on Glenwood Trail. I have 2 questions. With the construction on Glenwood Trail that's coming in the winter, is there any plan in place as far as logistics? We're told that the sewer project is going to start in February and run till June. How are you going to accommodate all the traffic? It's going to be for residents only on Glenwood Trail. I'm just concerned if you guys are getting out ahead of this, because I'd say 90% of the people that are going to the elementary school are going down Glenwood Trail. So they're going to have sewers, they're going to have construction, all the driveways are going to be, it's just going to be a mess. And with the log jam that you're seeing at Oaks and Glenwood already, this is only going to make it worse. But my other concern is the kids that I have a 9th grader, and he goes to the high school. He takes the bus. One day he didn't take the bus. My wife was home, so she took him. They were in a traffic jam. He got there 2 minutes late. He was marked tardy. My wife called the principal to say, there was, traffic. All the buses were late, so he was late. And she said, the kids that were on the bus were not marked tardy. They got there at the same time, a couple minutes late. He was marked tardy. Is there a rule or is there a policy that kids that are being dropped off have a different standard for being tardy? So those are my 2 concerns. I would like to say that things have improved a lot at the elementary school, and I appreciate your efforts. I hope that continues. I'm just concerned about this winter when the construction constricts things even further. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
William Alessandro.
William Alessandro, Glenwood Trail. Got the concern on the buses. We were told last year that none of the buses will be using our street as a cut through. And so far, they all cut through. We got buses galore, bumper to bumper, all the way down our street. And Glenwood Trail, you should know that too, because you drive down there. And
That's not from Glenwood Trail.
do you? Good. I went to the bus garage and talked to the guy who's in charge, and he didn't know nothing. And he wasn't told of anything. We were told by the mayor, we were told by the board here last year that no buses will go down Glenwood Trail. They're gonna reroute them all. Well, they go out of the park, they go to the park now. They turn left into the park and go down to Bar Road. They turn left on Bar Road, go down to Oaks, they turn left on Oaks, then they turn right on Glenwood Trail, and then left on 82, and then right down their street. Half the distance, if they took a right on, going out of the park, go to Broadview Road, take a right on 82, 2 minutes up the street is their road. They'll be there in half the time. They're a nuisance. I drove a school bus for years, go to another city, but they're a nuisance. Now, why can't somebody think about the time the buses take to get there and back? Meanwhile, they're going around a circle. They're going like a mile out of the way just to go back to their yard. So somebody's got to learn how to do something with these buses. Now, if that guy, the new guy that you got in there, he's been there 4 months, I talked to him. And I'm sorry, that man don't know nothing. Okay. I used to be a coordinator myself. And besides driving a bus. And we talked to him about it. And I says, go and measure. Think about where these buses are going. They're spending all this time going around the block like they're in a parade. Instead of going out, and they're back and they're up the road. But no, they're down our street, bumper to bumper. This morning, they were 3/4 of the way down Glenwood Trail because of the light. Now, if there was an emergency vehicle had to get in one of them houses, they'd never do it. They're all waiting to get in. So I think that should be addressed.
You have 10 seconds.
Good. And I forgot what the other one was. There was nothing. Oh, it has to do with the property, but well, I'm going to discuss it with you ahead. So yeah, it has to do with something else. But I'd like to get that thing solved about the buses. We were told even by the mayor that it wouldn't happen, and here it's happening. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. I would just also encourage people that have issues. It's good to hear those. You know, the best thing advice I could offer is, so like if there are transportation issues, start with the transportation supervisor. And if you're not finding satisfaction for whatever reason, you can go up to Joelle, the superintendent. You can always come directly to the board, but if you come directly to the board, let's say in an email or a phone call, we're going to go to Joelle. Joelle's going to go down to the transportation supervisor. Same thing. Right. But so what I'm saying is that, you know, not just your comments, but other comments, right? You know, whether it's pay, whether it's transportation, with commitments, like we're not going to have, we're going to go back to, okay, you know, our bus is really being routed down Glenwood, or, you know, transportation. And so from the public standpoint, the most efficient way to get to the answer would be to go to the area that you're concerned, you know, whether it's the treasurer's office or transportation. And if you don't find satisfaction, you know, kind of go up the chain and we can kind of try to vet it out. Then you can always, right. No, it's fine. So these are just, right. So these are just general comments. You can always come directly to the board. But, you know, something with, you know, more of like in an email or a phone call where we can get some detail and then somebody can look into it. Because, you know, we are a public district, so, you know, we want to serve our public. So, so those are just some comments. Is there anybody else, or is that it? Okay, thank you all for sharing your comments this evening. We're going to move on to item 9, I think. 9A, yes. 9A, this is a discussion on transportation, and we have a few bullet points that some of the topics we want to talk about, and we can expand even farther. I know there were some other comments about transportation, so maybe we'll expand this discussion. So transportation at the high school and middle school, we want to know how's it going, because obviously there's a lot more traffic on Mill Road. Are students able to start on time? Has the increased commute time for many negated the benefits of a later start time? So as a reminder, part of the changing of the bell schedule was to try to allow our high school students to sleep in a little bit longer and have a little bit later start. But if the increased traffic is requiring them to get up and leave earlier, maybe that's cutting into that time they could be getting rest. Is there an opportunity to drop off high school students by the building when the weather is bad? We had received some feedback that when the storm blew in the other day, the students got caught in it and had to walk up the hill and got drenched. Are we having any issues with the Here Comes the Bus app, possible traffic study on Mill Road by both cities? And then I think there's some more underneath there, but why don't we just stay with this block of high school and middle school discussion, and then we'll move on to wherever else the discussion wants to go.
Well, certainly we started off a little bumpy. What I said at the PSO meeting is, we took this year and we moved everybody's cheese. There was not a single person who wasn't affected by all the changes that we made this year. We changed the middle school and high school time to start together. We took a tier of busing out, and then we opened up brand new elementary school. So everybody in our district's cheese was moved this year. And was it perfect the first 5 or 6 days of school? Absolutely not. We didn't know, we didn't know. So we all tried something new. We have to learn from what we tried new. So the first couple of days it hasn't, but I will tell you, it has gotten better. Much better. Both police chiefs have called me to say it's much better. They're not concerned about the traffic that is on Mill Road. They say it's moving at a great pace, that they're able to get in off of Mill Road into the building on our campus, the way we've designed the traffic pattern. There is no issues on our campus. Once you get on our campus, it is very free flowing to the designated lots of where you have to go. I did not hear of any issues in terms of drop off in the morning. I'm hearing about this from you now. But from the city standpoint, after the first couple of days on Mill Road, the traffic has seemed to be moving at a pace that they're all comfortable with. Has it increased commute time? I don't know. I mean, we heard that some kids at the beginning were leaving earlier to feel like they had to get to school on time. And so it was kind of negating that. I haven't heard any of that feedback since that first week or so of school. So I'm not sure if that's the case. High school students at the building in the morning, unfortunately, it's probably not something that we have time for because of the time that the elementary school starts and the bus is having to get to the elementary routes. I don't know if that's that's something that we can look at. I do know that with the creation of this new parking lot that we're putting at the high school, one of the things that we talked about was possibly if they would fit, and we have to get the playground, calling it a playground, we have to get the parking lot designed. I did ask the question, is it possible to exchange that as the bus parking lot because it's in closer proximity to both the buildings? So it might alleviate some of the weather issues that we're experienced by where we're dropping off. We just have to wait and see. That parking lot is slated to be done in November. So once it gets done and we can figure out if that's a possible new place to put the buses up on top of that hill so it's in closer proximity to the middle school and high school, we'll definitely explore that, but we're not there yet. Here Comes the Bus app. Yes, we had some issues with it the first few days. There was something with a credentialing or something. I don't remember what the issue was. There was a certificate we had to renew, so that got renewed, and then it was working for all of one bus. I think it was bus 22. The app was not working appropriately. We got that fixed. So by the second week of school, the Here Comes the Bus app, I believe, is working for all of the buses now. Traffic study on Mill Road from both cities. That is a reality. The mayor reached out to me on Friday and said that both cities are jointly conducting a traffic study on Mill Road. Not so much because of what the issues or what people are saying are issues with traffic, more so about where crosswalks and signage is located along Mill Road to see if that's conducive to the traffic flow on that street. So that is being conducted. The timing on that I reached back out to see, I think that's going to be mobilized here in the next few weeks. So we should have some additional information on that traffic study here, by the end of the month.
And I would also add that I think we're still because we talked about this before, but we're still also looking at a third way on or off the campus after so we've had good successes so far, but a third access point on or off the campus in one or possibly two locations could drastically also help with student drivers getting to school, if they have their own designated entrance, for instance. So once we get these other buildings like Chippewa and Highland, we will be able to relook at that as well, because we kind of put it on hold to be more proactive instead of just reacting immediately, I guess. But I mean, it's working the way it is, but we're still going to continue to look at that avenue of a third way on or off this campus.
So an additional question I had is the new parking lot that we're building, that's to replenish about 100 spots that we lost when we redesigned the bus traffic. But then there was some comments about it doesn't look like all of the parking spots are in use today. Is that in fact accurate? Are there 100 students waiting on a waiting list for that parking lot to be done, or?
I don't believe there's 100 students on the waiting list. Last I talked to Kevin about this, and this was a couple weeks ago, it wasn't a recent conversation, was that they still had spots available for any student that wanted to get a parking pass.
So why are we building 100 spot parking lot if we are not even using all of the parking spots that we have today?
Yeah, so we based that conversation and that data on what we sold last year. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, if there's less kids driving to school, but they just did not sell that many tickets or parking passes as they did in the years past, where they were very concerned about being short parking spaces.
So our students driving in, we dropped by 100 at least? Is that because we had 100 parking spots, or were we all sold out last year?
No, so we were not all sold out last year. And from what I understand, they oversell, but even if you drove in that junior lot, that was never completely full anyways. So while we took away 100 spots, we weren't utilizing 100 spots down there.
When did we sell these spots? Like, at what point did we know we have enough without building a new parking lot?
Yeah, not even, because they pre-sale for seniors as a kind of a senior privilege, and then the seniors get to pick their spots and do the painting on the senior lots. And so after the seniors get to pick their lots, which is mostly they're parking down by where the auditorium is in that senior lot, and then the lot behind that, then it's opened up to juniors and sophomores who have required to drive. So that the sale for the seniors didn't happen until August 12th. That week of August 12th, they allow a week or 2 weeks for seniors to buy lots. So it was right at the start of the school where they started selling for juniors and seniors. So it was soon after the start of school where, you know, it was a conversation to say, how are we on parking? How many kids are on our waiting list? And we were told that there's still spots available, that they hadn't even sold out all of the spots.
Well, because the construction of the parking lot was delayed, hence we still don't have the parking lot done. And at the moment, we learned that we didn't need that extra parking. I know we had money invested in it proactively, but it would have been good to know that, because maybe we could have had a conversation about, do we want to hit pause and not finish the parking lot? Because it sounds like we're building a bridge to nowhere now. We're going to build, and I know it'll help the campus over the long run. So it's not that the money is wasted, but it also sounds like we didn't need the parking lot. And fine, we thought based on last year's parking numbers, we were going to need it. But in August, when the trend started to show that we weren't going to need that many spots, you know, it would have been good to know that, so that the board could have had a conversation about, do we want to continue, or do we want to pause and maybe, you know, eat whatever money we had invested in the design of it and say, let's just put the design in a closet and hold off on doing it. So now we're finding out now, after we've already kind of got committed, we can't pivot now, right? I mean, now we're at a place where the construction is going to, where are we at with the construction? Did they put shovels in the ground?
Is it this week?
They're moving, they had to move an electric pole, or so that I think that is happening. They're going to be on campus tomorrow to look at that, moving that pole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing is, I mean, kids are going to continue to age in, so we don't know what that's going to look like either, of kids that will start to drive. I don't know if, given the uncertainty of it, if kids did not purchase early and they're just waiting until the new lot's done as well. That I don't, those are the answers we don't know, and maybe we can
And
talk to Kevin again too.
We
to
can,
see what-
I mean, he may have sold more, he may have sold enough and we might be on a waiting list at this point in time. Like I said, I had a conversation with him 2 weeks ago and that's where, that was where he was 2 weeks ago. If he sold more and we're on a waiting list, then no, I just don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I have a question. This is really something that I'm sure you guys don't have the answer to, but maybe bring it up with the transportation director. There's apparently a sign on Avery Road that is prohibiting traffic during prime time when a lot of bus traffic would be on that road. So I'm wondering if that is somehow connected to the experience that these gentlemen on Glenwood Trail. So
Who is that? Who did that?
Bobby Heights.
Bobby Heights. Right before.
No through traffic.
Maybe it's just a coincidence.
The chief went up, I was talking to the chief, he went up there to look at the sites, he didn't believe it.
So
Because that was Chief Archie,
Oh, like it is.
but yeah, they're, and they had a cop there sitting there. I'm sure nobody went through.
So would they ticket our bus drivers?
well,
Boy, that'd be interesting.
yeah, sounds like we need to have like a mediation or something, but I guess that was one question that I had. And I'm also wondering if there's an adult who's in the parking lot twice a day, every day, watching these adolescents and teenagers not pay attention to where they're going. Like, can we do some sort of like publicity campaign about safety at the high school and the middle school about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely can do that. It's the same issue we have every spring with the kids not walking up to the crosswalk at 82 to cross over to go to Starbucks. They run right across Mill Road and right across 82 or Brecksville Road. And we have, as much as we say those messages and tell the kids the right thing that they should be doing and walking up to the crosswalk and making sure you're staying in the crosswalk when you're leaving the buses, we can say it and we can put up signage and we can do all of those things as a proactive measure to keep kids in. But the reality is if they're not going to pay attention to those signs, sure, we could put up signage. We could, we sent out messages. I know Todd put it out there all the time to his middle school kids. Please, if you're going over to the, in the spring about crossing 21 and, we had near misses and we were so proactive. We talked to parents about it. We talked to PSO about it. Talk to your kids, parents, please have them do the following. And so, yes, we can do all of that.
That's always going to be part of the equation is reemphasizing safety protocols, paying attention, whatnot. But I know when we did the initial design of bus traffic, we found it wasn't working. We had gotten feedback from our bus drivers that layout was not going to be safe, which is what caused us to redesign the layout, which lost us the 100 parking spots. And so if there are continued concerns about safety, while it's always good to emphasize students to be aware and try to pay attention, there could also potentially be some alternatives to addressing, improving safety, whatever that is, right? So whether it's redesigning some of the routing, whether it's, putting up cones or some kind of fencing or something, right? And so, perhaps, this is an opportunity to engage all of our staff, bus drivers included, to say, don't just say, hey, there's a problem, but what's the solution? Does anybody have any ideas? Because we do have some constraints with where you can route traffic and get buses in and out and have all that. You've got to balance all of that. And so, maybe there's an opportunity there to say, hey, can somebody brainstorm and think of a way that we could design this bus pickup and drop off in a way that improves safety and gives students a little more latitude so that if they're not quite paying attention, they don't run into a mirror. So I guess I would just kind of offer that up as maybe, try to engage our staff and say, don't just give us feedback on where the problems are, but bring us ideas or solutions to it. In this greater transportation discussion, since these two gentlemen brought up concerns about bus traffic down Glenwood, I would think we have all of our routes come out of software. I would think that that would be something that we could check to say, are any of our buses routed down Glenwood Trail? And if they are, was there in fact a commitment made? And did the word not get passed on that we shouldn't route traffic down that route, other than traffic buses that have to go down there because there's stops there. But I would think that would be something that we could figure out. And also if there were commitments made and we need to look at that, that routing could be adjusted, but that also would affect transportation times. And I know we had the one gentleman expressed concerns about the long bus times for some students. And again, in that broader context of travel times, we understand that some of these travel times are not ideal, but it is due to a bus driver shortage. So we don't have enough buses to be able to put more routes in place to shorten times right now. Bus drivers. We have plenty of buses. It's a bus driver shortage.
I would like to see something officially like reported back to the board about Avery. I find that a huge thing that's going on, that a sign was put up right before school. I know that the partnership between Brecksville and offering to do things to make things better for our students has been very strong and wonderful. I wonder about Glen Trail and is that a coincidence? But I would like an official report. I know Mr. Wolf is asking us to reroute next year our homecoming, so it goes through Broadview Heights. So they want the fruits of that, but yet I want to see the commitment of that city because we are Brecksville, Broadview Heights, and they've told us that they want to make sure that we say that. So I want to understand what happens if our parents do go down there. I want to understand what happens if our bus drivers, is that a ticketing situation? And I want to understand how enforceable that is. And I want the public to know, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna pretend that it's nothing because it is something. Because I also see the things that city asked of us, and I don't see the same partnership going on, especially if Avery was done right before school and the public doesn't know some other things that had gone on when we were constructing our schools. So, and what happened with Broadview Heights. So that said, I'm asking for an official report. I'd like to know what can happen. And I want to make sure that the public at least is well informed if they are going to be ticketed and if our bus drivers are going to be ticketed. I want the school district to be well aware and I want them to know what the city is doing to be a strong partner to us. So I am asking, I don't know who's in charge of that, but I'm asking that for the next meeting and in front of the public. I don't know.
Well,
anything.
yeah.
So we're gonna add, I'm just asking for a board level report.
Yeah, it's a broader conversation.
It's a
So
broad
we need to
conversation.
get more information.
We do need more.
Do we at least know, like, what was conveyed to the board was all of our bus traffic was going to enter the new elementary building off of Valley Parkway. Do we know, is that in fact happening? So we don't have any buses that are coming down Oaks and coming in. That's all parent traffic.
It's all parent traffic except for our middays. So our half-day kindergarten, those buses in the preschool drop-off will come into the front, but there's no parents going in and out of there at that time. So those are the only buses, midday routes that are coming in the front entrance off of Oaks.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm kind of
It's a
gonna,
free for all.
okay, well, I'm kind of gonna go back to the question about, is there an opportunity to drop off high school students by the building when the weather is bad? And I understand for all the logistical reasons why that might not be the case because of the tight timeline and getting everyone dropped off and getting back out to the elementary routes. But we did have I took a lot of phone calls. I took a lot of parent concerns after the torrential downpour that happened and the kids were pushed off the buses they had to go and walked up, and got thoroughly drenched. and sat in school. And this may not seem kids need to toughen up. I've heard all of that and everything else, but when you're sitting through how many periods to high school and with your shoes completely sopping wet, pouring out water, socks, sweatshirts, sweatpants, that is not a good learning environment for students for an entire day to be able to engage in rigorous learning. So, I mean, I don't know what proactively can be done. And I, you know, the parents that were reaching out were really not trying to complain, but it impacted their students pretty greatly. I guess what I want to know is like, how do we proactively deal with that? It might be a one-off, it may never happen again, but can every kid have a locker? Should we, I mean, I hate to bring it back to like elementary school, but do we need to have kids be able to have an extra set of clothes at school? Or are we gonna, I mean, how can we kind of preemptively handle that should it happen again? Because it's impacting student learning. That's my concern.
My
So-
understanding is every kid does have a locker, so if it is something that they can, you know, bring clothes and keep them in there. I know several of the parents said that they had to bring stuff up for their kids and they, you know, change. That's, you know, also an option. But, you know, in terms of, that's why I mentioned the comment about the parking lot, that, you know, that would actually bring it closer. Because we have this problem every year, even when that wasn't our bus lot and kids were not dropped off on the buses there, all of our juniors park there. So it's the same distance walk that they were getting to the high school anyways, even if, you know, it was raining, those kids were walking up that hill in the same rainstorm as if they were on the bus right now. So it's not like we've increased their walking length anymore. So I just think it became an issue this year because now it's the bus lot as opposed to before it was the junior lot, and all those junior kids are walking just as far up that hill if they had bad weather. But yes, kids always have the option of keeping, you know, a change of clothes in their locker should they want to do that.
My understanding is not every kid, they may have a locker, but I believe the high schoolers, and I'm not sure about the middle school, can opt into a locker or not. Because a lot of them, their locker may be, I mean, their schedule may be on the second and third floor, you know, and their locker is assigned on I don't know if their locker's on the first floor, but I mean, that's the thing, you know, and do we assign them one, you know, or do we continue to let them opt out? I'm just, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly can have a conversation with Kevin about maybe just assigning everyone a locker, and if they choose to use it or not, that's up to the student, you know, and then if they need to keep something there, they certainly have the space to do it.
Well, I'm wondering also, this year has entailed so much change, and with change, ultimately behavior is going to change. So I would imagine that some people in their commute the first week of school have altered. Like I know some people are like, I'm going to get up earlier, I'm going to go later, I'm going to take the bus, I'm going to drive. And so people are settling into more of a cadence on what does this traffic look like? What's the time look like? I need to make an adjustment. I need to pull back, start a little earlier, or, you know, take an alternate route or what have you. You know, is this a case where students were being dropped off right in front of the building and they didn't have a long walk? So if it rained hard, there was a limited time. Now they have a longer walk. Is there an opportunity? Maybe they buy a little umbrella, put that in their backpack and have an umbrella. I mean, I imagine, because you're right, you know, all the students that are parking in the junior lot every day, you know, they know I've got to walk. And if it's going to rain, shame on me if I'm all wet, right? I've got to bring an umbrella. So maybe there's an opportunity for people to start changing behavior too, to say, you know what, maybe because of where the bus drops off, you know, maybe part of the solution could be, you know, put an umbrella in the backpack and make sure you have an umbrella or something to put over your head. But or we assign them a really big textbook. Dave, can we do that? A waterproof textbook, right?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I know. No, and I'm not trying to shift, but, you know, in the broader conversation about how do we solve this, because it is a difficult thing, right? Because if you're like, well, it's raining today, so now we're going to move the bus traffic up closer to the building, you know, that presents logistical problems as well as time problems. And we already are experiencing issues with long bus rides for many of our students. So we have to be creative, I guess, is part of the solution, I think. Other questions about the high school and middle school before we,
I actually.
or elementary?
Yeah, I
for
was
that
gonna say,
matter.
there's no elementary questions on here, and I know that we've had several conversations around the elementary school as well. We hear a lot about the length of the ride home for our students. I would have to also assume that the length of the ride to school is equal, or no? I only hear about the ride home is too long. I never hear about the ride to school being too long. I'm just curious if like I'm missing
Good point.
a part of the context of like maybe I honestly don't know.
You know, I think part of the conversations that parents have had with the long bus ride home is that, you know, we have a lot of kids who fortunately are involved in some, you know, activities outside of school. And so when parents know that the kids get out of school at 3:45 and they schedule something at 4:30 and their kids are getting off the bus at 4:30, it's like, oh my gosh, this bus ride is so long, as opposed to in the morning, the only place they're going to is school. So I think there's a different mindset for the
Okay.
afternoon bus ride because there are people that need to get to certain things. You know, we've had parents come up and they said, well, my child has to be somewhere at 4:00. Well, school ends at 3:45. So, you know, that has been publicized for a long time what time school ends. And so, you know, we talk to some of those parents and say, you know, if this is a once in a while thing, or if it's for a religious reason, or there's a doctor's appointment, we have a procedure in place that you can come at 3:30 and pick up your child and, you know, get to your 4:00 appointment. But, you know, as a whole, school ends at 3:45. And, you know, elementary school is a lot different than high school. And this is what I want people to get from this conversation. The high school, there's 1,200 kids at the high school. That bell rings and 1,200 kids are out of the building in 5 minutes. That doesn't work that way in an elementary school. You've got little kids who don't know how to read, that are in kindergarten class. They wander off. They don't know their numbers. You can't say, go stand in bus 22's line. You've got to physically take them to bus 22's line so that they get on the right bus. Your 4th and 5th graders, not a problem. But your kids in kindergarten, 1st grade, they're distracted. They're little kids. And so you can't just say, go to the field house and find your bus number. It doesn't work that way. So, you know, as people are saying, you know, it takes a half hour to dismiss the kids. There are 1,700 kids in that building. You better believe that it takes us all of that time. It takes us 15 minutes to get to the kids into those bus lines. And then it takes another 15 minutes to get those kids out the door, making sure that every little kindergartner is following along the way they should on the right bus. The first day we had 6 kids go on different buses because they followed the wrong line out there. So it is more of a supervision issue at the elementary school than it is at the middle school or at the high school. You can't just open up the doors and let these kids go. So as parents are saying this is a long dismissal, you're right, it's a long dismissal. We're dealing with 5 and 6-year-olds and 3-year-olds because we have preschool, trying to get them on the right bus and get them out. And you know what? For 1,700 kids in that building, we have every parent drop off out of there in less than 17 minutes. And every bus in the last 2 weeks has been off that campus at 4:05. Wow. 1,700 kids we're able to move in 20 minutes. I'm very proud of our bus drivers and very proud of our staff at the elementary school that we have been able to do that. So I would ask that we're not so critical. I understand it's a long day. Your kids are happy. They love it. They love riding the bus. They love walking down to the field house. They're having a good time in this process. And while I understand it might be frustrating for parents, you know, it has taken a small miracle to get it down to where we've gotten it right now. But it is a process, and it's not something that we can replicate at the middle school or high school. We have to supervise those kids and get them out in an orderly manner. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that. We had some growing pains, but we've got it down. We have no issues of traffic on Oaks Road. We changed the way parents come in and drop off. We changed the whole dismissal procedure, and it works.
Well, and to echo my comment from before, you know, perhaps this is also a situation where, you know, behaviors have to change, expectations have to change. I mean, we went from 3 local schools that were smaller in size and much easier to navigate in and out of, to bringing, you know, 4 schools worth all into one building. And so there are certainly many positives and benefits from that, but there are also some challenges: transportation, cafeteria, getting all that, those number of kids through. And so that does represent some challenges, but, you know, people are probably looking at, well, the way that it used to be, we used to get them, they didn't have to wait that long. And so, we'll do as much as we can to tweak the process and make it as fast as possible. But there also might be some level setting change that goes on that says, there's no way to take 1,700 students and get them out the building and onto buses as fast as when you had 300 at a building.
Yes.
And I would just add, I worked in elementary schools for 22 years, it's like, I'm in elementary schools that are a third of the size of ours, and our average dismissal is 20 to 25 minutes. It's unbelievable that we're getting that many students where they need to be dismissed within essentially 20 minutes. Seriously, truthfully, that is procedure being worked and honed and changed to meet the needs. So I think it should be commended.
Thank you. Sports teams transportation. How do we intend to transport our sports teams? So in years past, we've always done it by bus. Clearly this year it's a challenge when we are short bus drivers, and if a bus driver calls off and we don't have a driver, we've had to double up on some routes at the elementary school, where an elementary route will go drop off the kids and then come back and pick up another route. We had a situation, I know this is why this came up. We had a situation where bus 22 is a regular bus at the elementary school. That driver fell ill and was unable to drive that bus. So the bus was at the lot. A substitute bus driver who had been on a route to take a tennis team to Medina jumped on that bus, and parents, because of the app, Here Comes the App, could track that bus and saw it was going down to Medina. And so we got some phone calls from parents to say, how do you send my child's bus on a sports trip instead of picking up the kids? Well, that's what happened. The substitute jumped on bus 22. Parents were able to track it. It wasn't that we sent bus 22 to transport our tennis team. It was that they took that particular bus to transport the tennis team. We had to double up on our route because we had an ill driver. So a bus driver went and dropped off their route and then came back and picked up those kids. And on that day, those kids did not leave the building until 4:06, but it was because we had to double up on a route. So our sports teams, because we are short drivers, we've had to cancel meets and matches at different schools because we didn't have drivers to transport. We are looking, and we are in the process of hiring a couple of van drivers for some of our smaller teams. That might be an option for us to do that. We want to have conversations with our coaches to be van certified. So if they do have a smaller team, like our golf team or our tennis team, that they could take a couple of vans, that might be an option for transportation. We have not discussed that at any length. We're just kind of spitballing some ideas on how we can not have to cancel some of our sporting events or cancel some of our routes to be able to do that. We already have the vans. So we have bought some vans already. How many do we have? Four vans?
I think we have more than that.
We have 4, but we have at least 4 vans. So we have them. You might see it. It's a big red van. It says Brexville Broadview Heights City Schools Co-Watch, put the emblem on the side, so it looks very nice. But so we already have the vans. We just don't have van drivers, and we're in the process of hiring possibly 2 van drivers to hopefully help with some of that sports team transportation.
If we have the coaches get van certified, can we discuss, we should pay for that. Obviously.
We do.
We do.
We do.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or comments on transportation? No, we're ending already? Okay. Let's move on then. Item 9B, resolve to approve the resolution authorizing the sale of Chippewa and Highland properties as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So, this resolution, as many probably already know, we have an agreement to sell Chippewa to Julie Billiart, and this is finalizing that sale of the building to that organization. We also had worked with the city of Brexville to market the Highland property, and we had a minimum bid basically that was the assessed value of the land and the building. And because there are challenges for developers to develop with the building on it, they did not receive any bids for Highland. So this is reauthorizing the city of Brexville to market but the floor is now just the land value. So we're dropping the floor to try to encourage more activity and more interest in the property. So that's what this resolution does. It's kind of a dual purpose resolution. It both authorizes the sale of Chippewa and authorizes Brecksville to market Highland at a land value price instead of land and building. Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Abstain.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Moving on, item 9D, resolve to approve the board policy revisions as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So here again, this is weapons policy. We had approved some policy changes earlier in a few months back, and we have weapons language in multiple policies, and this was an effort to synchronize all of those policies so that the wording is similar and that it's very crystal clear. And this is a second reading, so after we roll call on this, that policy will be in effect. But it substantively won't change anything because the old policy, it's carrying forward the same thing. We're not changing anything. We're just tightening up the language, making it consistent to ensure that we have a clear weapons policy. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Moving on to item 10, superintendent's other business. Item A, resolve to approve proactive behavior services agreement as attached. Item B, resolve to approve robotics trip to the Riverbots tournament in Monroe, Michigan. Item C, resolve to approve the contract with Power School for the conversion and ongoing support of student information system. Item D, resolve to approve superintendent's other business items A through C. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Joelle, you want to walk us through these?
Sure. So item A is a particular contract for a specific student who is currently receiving their education at home. And this is a contract to provide the behavior services needed as per the IEP for that particular student. Our robotics team is going to a tournament in Michigan. So this is just a board approval that they are able to go. And we are in the process of switching over our student information system. So this is the contract that allows us to begin that conversion to a new student information system.
Any questions or comments?
Who do we use now for SIS?
Progress book Dazzle.
That's what I thought. Okay. Just wondered.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Moving on to agenda item 11, superintendent's consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. Item D, resolve to approve superintendent's consent items A through C. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any
Sure.
questions about any of the recommendations?
No.
No questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Abstain.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Item 12, treasurer's consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve the financial reports as attached. Item B, resolve to approve non-resident tuition paying student for the 2022-2023 school year. Item C, resolve to approve the revised student handbook, activity handbook as submitted. Item D, resolve to approve the attached annual reporting of commercial paper per ORC 135.142C. Item E, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item F, resolve to approve the minutes from the August 16th, 2022 regular board meeting and the August 29th, 2022 special board meeting as attached. Item G, resolve to approve treasurer's consent items A through F. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Greg, you want to walk us through these?
Quickly. Financial report. So I did add a new fun graph. I have to fix the colors, so don't judge me.
I did have questions.
I was like, okay, thank you. Continue. Go away. Whoa, what are you doing to me? It just needs to reload, apparently. Maybe. I'm like, okay, so this is basically how it lines up with the 5-year forecast. So the month of August, those financials have now been entered. So you can see that we took in basically $13.5 million in the month of August. That is due to real estate taxes. And then we come down this column and these are all of our expenses. So $2.3 million in salaries, $911,000 in benefits, and down the line we go. For total expenditures of $3.9 million. So it was a profit for the month. That's very typical for here. As you see, moving forward, there'll be negatives because we don't have those the property taxes coming in. If we take a peek over to the other side, this compares the bottom line to this is where we are today, 71,000. Again, that razor thin at the end of the year. This is projected right now where we'd be to the positive. The current forecast says 61,000. So we're doing pretty well as of right now. I'm going to be going through those again, possibly new staff. We have to look at those things. So this may, obviously can change for the November forecast and we'll keep an eye on it. For the charts I have, this is our basically comparison from last year revenues and then this year revenues. And this is basically just due to the timing of when those advances came in. Last month, we had received more advances than the prior year, so nothing to be concerned about. On the other side across from it is the expenditures from last year and then from this year. Again, that's usual because we have new contracts, we've got new salaries, all of that stuff. So it's still an increase, but it's not a really large increase, which is good to show that we don't have anything out of the ordinary. So it's all based on why we have more expenditures, which is that some salaries have already reset. Those final salaries are resetting basically with teacher contracts in September. So we'll probably see a jump here at the next month at the October meeting. Again, all salaries have increased and so benefits have too, i.e. the retirement costs, which are percentages of salary. So that's why we see an increased cost in those. So we see on the revenue side, currently we have a little bit of an unfavorable as well as to be considered on the expenditure side as favorable to still net us out to what our ending cash balance would be projected. And then I added this chart here, which don't ignore the color charts at the top. What this is this is fiscal to date. So July to current to the end of August. So July and August, fiscal to date revenues from fiscal 22 and fiscal to date revenues for fiscal 23 in blue. So you see a little bit of an increase overall in the revenues. That increase is also seen in the expenditure line, which is why we see a very similar balanced budget. But these were the expenditures fiscal to date from 22 and then fiscal to date for 23. So it's kind of good to see. I mean, we don't want expenditures to be growing, of course, but still like we're seeing it grow at the same rate at least, which seems to be good at the moment. So I added that chart for you guys to take a look at. Tuition paying student, that's just a contract to receive tuition for a family that's going to pay full tuition at the state price. This is an update to the student activity handbook, just some outdated, antiquated language, procedures, things like that. I went through all of that and updated that so we can be good moving forward. Law requires us to report that we do have some investments in commercial paper. And so all of those commercial paper transactions are listed in that report. Also, in addition to the board approving this, it also gets sent to the state superintendent as well as the auditor of state's office. Donations, again, are as listed. We did have a sizable donation there for the purchase of game uniforms for the football program. So thank you to them and some other smaller ones that are on here as well. And then the minutes. Any questions?
No questions or comments? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Item 13, resolve to enter into executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per Ohio Revised Code 121.22, item A. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. That concludes our public portion of the meeting. After executive session, we'll close out the meeting. So thank you all for attending and sorry for keeping you so late. Thanks.
We are good.
All right. Are we live?
Yes.
Okay. Item 13C, resolve to exit executive session. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Item 14A, announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for October 26th. Item B, adjournment. Resolve to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack? Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes, this concludes our meeting. Good night, everyone.